She smiled at me. And then she shoved us off the boat, miles from shore. I couldn't believe what just happened. No, this couldn't be real. I was gasping for air as my 8-year-old son screamed for help. There was nothing I could do. Just seconds before, everything had been perfect. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. The shock hit like a tidal wave. I never saw it coming. Mandy, my own sister, the one who I thought I could trust, had just pushed me and my son into the ocean. And as the water closed over my head, all I could think was, why? It was supposed to be a normal day, a quiet family getaway. My husband, Leon, and I had taken our son Philip on a small boating trip, hoping to enjoy the summer sun and the open water. We were joined by my sister Mandy, her friend Sandy, and my uncle Manny, a group of people who, despite our differences, always seemed to make up for any rough patches in our relationships. But that day, something changed. The boat hummed quietly along the water. Mandy, always the playful one, was sitting near the edge, chatting and laughing. Her carefree energy was infectious, and everything felt fine. But the more I watched her, the more I started to feel uneasy. Something in her eyes, the way she kept glancing at me, felt off. I shook it off. She was just being her usual unpredictable self. But then it happened. In one swift motion, Mandy smiled that all-too-familiar grin, the one that never quite reached her eyes, and shoved me and Philip over the side of the boat. The force of the push was brutal, and before I could even process what was happening, we were in the water. It was cold and shocking, my body reacting instinctively. My son was crying, screaming my name, but it didn't stop me from realizing that the boat, it didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. Why wasn't anyone reacting? Why was the boat still moving away from us? Panic set in as the boat faded into the distance, its engine roaring over the water. We were alone, stranded. My heart raced as I turned to Philip, clutching him tightly to keep him from drifting away in the current. His small hands were shaking in mine. "Mom, she didn't mean it, right?" he whispered, his voice trembling. But I couldn't answer. I didn't know. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, just as the fear of drowning started to settle in, something terrifying happened. I felt a ripple under the water. Something big was moving closer. The horror I felt in that moment? I can't describe it, but it was just the beginning. The cold water burned my lungs. It was impossible to think straight. My heart pounded in my chest, and panic was starting to take hold. I looked around, trying to orient myself, but all I saw was the endless stretch of water, the waves crashing against my body. Philip was clinging to me, his small arms wrapped tightly around my neck, his sobs loud against the chaos of the ocean. I tried to steady myself, to get my bearings, but the panic kept bubbling up. The boat, it was gone. It was so far now that it was barely a dot on the horizon. Mandy, my sister, had left us behind without a second thought. Why? Why would she do this? As I struggled to keep my head above water, I tried to recall the moments leading up to this. The boat had been calm, peaceful, and Mandy had seemed normal. For once, there was no snide remark or sly comment. I remember thinking how nice it was that she wasn't being her usual, unpredictable self. But now, looking back, there were warning signs I ignored. Little things. The way she had been too quiet, the odd look she gave me when I spoke to her earlier. She had smiled at me just before she shoved us off, and that smile, it didn't feel right. It was too cold, too rehearsed. It wasn't the mischievous grin I knew so well. It was something darker. And the worst part? No one did anything. Leon, my husband, had been right there. Why didn't he stop her? Why didn't Sandy or Monty speak up? They were all looking at me when it happened, but no one seemed to react. The boat just kept moving, and I was left to drown in the water, trying to figure out why my own sister had turned against me. "Mom, she didn't mean it, right?" Philip's voice broke through my thoughts, bringing me back to reality. His wide eyes looked up at me, searching for an answer I didn't have. Did she mean it? I don't know, baby, I managed to say, my voice thick with fear. But we have to stay calm. We're going to be okay. I tried to reassure him, but the truth was, I wasn't sure we were going to make it out of this. The water was too cold. The distance from shore was too far. And then, something caught my eye. A movement in the water, a shadow. Something big was swimming just beneath the surface. It was too close now, too close for comfort. My stomach dropped. "Mom, what's that?" Philip whispered, his grip tightening around me. I turned quickly, my heart hammering in my chest. There was no time to react. The shadow was moving fast, too fast. Was it a shark? I didn't have time to think. My heart pounded in my chest as I pulled Philip closer to me. The cold water surrounded us, and every instinct screamed at me to get out. Swim, move, do something. But there was something in the water beneath us. It was coming closer. "Mom, what is that?" Philip's voice trembled, his eyes wide with terror as he looked behind us. I turned, but I couldn't see clearly. The shadow beneath the water was huge, shifting quickly, cutting through the waves with ease. My stomach dropped, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out from the sheer terror of it all. What if it was a shark? Or worse, what if it was something even bigger? I gritted my teeth and tried to stay calm. We need to swim. I forced my body to move, even though the water felt like it was fighting against me. Every stroke was harder than the last. I wasn't sure what was happening. My arms were burning, and I felt like I was swimming through thick mud. There was a sense of heaviness in my body, like something was dragging me down. The cold water seemed to be seeping into my muscles, slowing me down. "Mom, we can't swim like this! We're gonna drown!" Philip cried, his voice choked with fear. I looked at him. His little face was pale with panic, and I could see the terror in his eyes. "We can't drown. Not like this." I wasn't going to let that happen, not while I still had breath in my lungs. I kept swimming, trying to push through the exhaustion and fear. But the more I swam, the worse it felt. My body wasn't responding the way it should. My legs felt like lead, and my arms were giving out. I couldn't keep my head above the water for long. It was as though something in the ocean was holding me back. I started to wonder, was something actually pulling me under? And that's when I saw it, a flash of silver. The shadow beneath us wasn't just a passing figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was big. Really big. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. For a split second, I thought I saw a dorsal fin. My breath caught in my throat. Was it a shark? A great white, maybe? The water around us was so murky I couldn't tell. But it didn't matter. I had to act fast. "Philip, hold on to me tight," I shouted, my voice sharp with fear. "Do you hear me? Hold on!" Philip nodded, but I could feel his grip slackening, his energy fading. I could see his small hands trembling against my body. We need to get out of here. But where? There was nothing but open water, no land in sight. The boat was gone. Then, something else hit me. I couldn't hear the boat's engine anymore. There was no sound of it coming back toward us. The people on board, Mandy, Leon, Sandy, Manny, they were just leaving us out here, stranded. No one was coming to help. They had abandoned us. A cold rage flared inside me. How could they leave us? How could Mandy do this? But I couldn't focus on that now. We were running out of time. Suddenly, the shadow below us darted forward, faster than I could react. The water churned violently as something powerful surged upward, and my stomach dropped. A huge shape. Sharks. Multiple. They were circling us. The panic hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to swim faster, but my limbs were too weak. The sharks were getting closer. This was it. We were going to be eaten alive. I couldn't outrun them, not like this. But then, through the frenzy of fear and movement, I saw something. A figure on the horizon. A shape. The boat? No, it was too far. It was Mandy. The water churned around us, the sharks circling ever closer, their fins slicing through the surface like knives. My body was giving out. My arms and legs were numb, and I couldn't keep my head above the water for much longer. Philip's cries echoed in my ears, growing weaker as his panic intensified. I gritted my teeth, desperately trying to hold on. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, Mandy. She was paddling toward us on a kayak, her figure cutting through the water with unnatural calmness. I didn't know if I felt relief or horror at the sight. Relief because at least someone was coming, but horror because why was she coming back? As Mandy approached, the sharks seemed to retreat slightly, but not for long. The predators were still circling, waiting. Why wasn't she helping us? My heart was racing, but I had to know. I had to hear the truth. I shouted as loud as I could, my voice barely cutting through the chaos. "Mandy, what are you doing? Why did you leave us?" She didn't answer immediately. She just smiled. That cold, empty smile. "Relax, Helen. You're fine," she said, her tone eerily calm. "I wasn't trying to kill you. I just wanted to make sure you understood something." I blinked, disbelief washing over me. What did she mean by that? The sharks were still there, moving closer, but I couldn't focus on them now. Mandy's words echoed in my head, each one more confusing than the last. Not trying to kill us? Was she serious? "What are you talking about?" I gasped, trying to stay afloat as Philip clung desperately to me. "Mandy, we're in the water with sharks. You pushed us off the boat, and now you're just sitting there like this is some kind of game." Her expression never faltered. She looked at me with an almost detached calmness. "It's not what you think. I needed you to understand something, Helen. You've always acted like you were the only one who mattered. Always with your perfect family. Well, guess what? I've been sick of it." My heart sank. This was what this was about? A game? A twisted lesson? I couldn't believe it. Mandy, my sister, had pushed me and Philip into the water with sharks just to make some point? To prove a lesson about family? The blood rushed to my ears, and for a moment, I felt like I was going to drown just from the shock of it all. How could she do this? But then, as if on cue, the sharks circled tighter, their movements becoming more aggressive. "Mandy, help us!" I shouted again, panic flooding my voice. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes showed something else. Guilt? Regret? It was hard to tell, but it didn't matter now. "I'm sorry, Helen. I really am," she said quietly, though there was no real emotion in her voice. "But this is the price of always leaving me behind. You've never cared. You've never really seen me." Her words struck deep. They weren't just about the boat. They were about years of hurt, years of feeling invisible and neglected by the very people she thought she could rely on. I didn't have time to process that. The sharks were closing in again, their jaws snapping just beneath the surface, waiting for a mistake. I turned to Philip, trying to reassure him, but my voice cracked. "We'll be okay, honey. Just keep holding on." But the sharks were getting closer, much closer, and I couldn't stop the fear from consuming me. Mandy paddled slowly away, watching us with a calmness that seemed unnatural. And that was the moment I realized. The real danger wasn't just the sharks. It was the cold, ruthless betrayal of my own sister. The sharks were almost on us now. My heart raced, my arms and legs burned, and the weight of the water pulling me down seemed heavier with every passing second. Philip clung to me, terrified, and I could feel him shaking uncontrollably. "Mom, we're gonna die," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the churning water. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't let him go. I had to focus. The sharks were circling, their fins cutting through the water like blades, ready to strike. My entire body screamed for me to stop, but I pushed on. We had to make it. We would make it. Then, just as I thought we were doomed, something unexpected happened. Mandy. She turned her kayak back toward us. It was a small movement, but it felt like a spark of hope. She was coming back. She was going to help us, right? But when she reached us, I saw it. There was no panic in her eyes, no urgency. She was just there, almost too calm. "Mandy, you have to help us. There's no time," I screamed, my throat raw. "Please, we're dying out here." She looked down at me, and for a brief second, her expression softened. "I'm sorry, Helen," she said. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't think it would go this far." I was stunned. Was she apologizing? Was she really sorry? Or was this all part of her twisted plan? I didn't have the time to figure it out. The sharks were closing in again, faster now. The reality of our situation hit me all at once. There was no one coming for us. Mandy looked at me with cold, emotionless eyes. "You should have listened to me earlier, Helen. You and Philip were never really mine to protect." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about me. It was about Mandy's years of feeling invisible, pushed aside, ignored. But none of this should have happened. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The sharks darted forward, their teeth gleaming. There was no time left. Suddenly, from the distance, I saw a small boat approaching. It wasn't Mandy's. It was a rescue boat, and it was coming fast. I didn't even know how long we had been in the water. Minutes? Hours? But I wasn't about to waste any more time. I screamed, waving my arms frantically, and Philip cried out too. The boat reached us in what felt like a lifetime, but it was there. We were finally pulled to safety. Mandy, watching from her kayak, stayed where she was. She didn't follow us. She didn't try to help. And when the boat crew brought us aboard, I turned to see her one last time. Her face was unreadable. Cold. "Why, Mandy?" I whispered, but she didn't answer. The boat sped away, leaving Mandy behind. After the rescue, the reality of what had happened began to settle in. I couldn't fully comprehend the gravity of Mandy's actions, but I knew one thing for sure. She hadn't just abandoned us. She had planned this. The entire thing was an orchestrated, calculated move to teach me a lesson I never asked for. She was angry at me for living a life she felt was more important, angry at me for not seeing her. I was shaken, but in that moment, I was also relieved. Philip was safe. We had survived. I couldn't stop shaking, but I held Philip tighter than ever. Tears ran down my face, not just from the terror I'd experienced, but from the heartbreak that my sister, the one person I had always thought would have my back, had done this. The anger was there too, but it was overshadowed by the realization that no matter what, We would survive. We were okay, even if everything else had fallen apart. In the days following the rescue, things started to unravel. Mandy's actions weren't just swept under the rug. Legal action was taken, and the truth came to light. It was clear now, what she had done was not an accident. It was intentional, a dangerous act of revenge disguised as a lesson. Mandy faced serious consequences. She was charged with endangerment, and the family's relationship with her was forever altered. Leon and I couldn't understand how things had gotten this far. The emotional scars would last for years. As for Philip, he struggled to understand why Mandy, someone he trusted, had done this. We tried to assure him that it wasn't his fault, but the betrayal left its mark. As for me, I was forever changed. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. But I also learned that I had the strength to protect my son, to survive, and to rise above this. The family, torn apart by Mandy's actions, would never be the same. But as I held Philip close, I knew we'd heal. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we would. The water, cold and unforgiving, had nearly taken us. But in the end, it wasn't the sharks or the ocean that almost broke me. It was the betrayal. And I'd never forget that lesson.